The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Prince William stood in his private study, staring at a photograph on his desk. It was a picture from happier times, him, Kate, and their 3 children laughing during a family picnic at Sandringham. But today, the image felt like a cruel reminder of how quickly life can change. It had been 3 weeks since the accident. 3 weeks since the phone call that shattered his world. Kate had been driving back from a charity event in Windsor when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact was devastating, and though she survived the initial crash, complications during surgery had left her in a coma that doctors couldn't guarantee she would wake from. William's hands trembled as he picked up the photograph. The children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had been asking fewer questions lately, but he could see the confusion and fear in their eyes. How do you explain to a child that their mother might never wake up? How do you maintain hope when the doctors speak in careful, measured tones that reveal more than they intend? The palace had issued statements about Kate's condition, asking for privacy during this difficult time. But William knew the media circus outside was growing larger each day. Photographers with long lenses waited at every corner, hoping to catch a glimpse of him entering or leaving the hospital. The nation held its breath, waiting for news that he couldn't give them because he didn't have it himself. His private secretary knocked gently on the door. "Your Royal Highness, the car is ready to take you to the hospital." William nodded, straightening his tie and composing himself. This was his routine now: morning visits before the children woke, afternoon visits between royal duties, and evening visits after putting them to bed. He lived between 2 worlds: the public face of a future king carrying on with his responsibilities, and the private agony of a husband who felt helpless. The drive to the hospital had become a blur of familiar landmarks that now held different meanings. The streets where he and Kate had walked hand in hand during their earliest relationship now felt like a journey through memories that might be all he had left. The hospital staff had grown accustomed to his presence, greeting him with respectful nods and sympathetic smiles that he had learned to acknowledge without breaking down. Kate's room was on the 4th floor, away from the main corridors to ensure privacy. As the elevator climbed, William's heart rate increased the way it did every time. Would today be different? Would there be some sign, some flicker of recognition in her eyes? The doctors had explained that coma patients could sometimes hear and understand what was happening around them, even if they couldn't respond. He pushed open the door to find Kate exactly as he had left her the night before. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. The ventilator helped her breathe, and her face remained peaceful but unresponsive. William pulled up the chair he had claimed as his own, a simple hospital chair that had become his anchor in this storm. "Good morning, darling," he whispered, taking her hand in his. Her skin was warm, her pulse steady, but there was no squeeze back, no sign that she knew he was there. The nurses had decorated the room with cards from well-wishers around the world. Flowers filled every available surface, sent by people who had never met Kate, but felt connected to her through her charitable work and public appearances. William began his daily ritual of talking to her about everything and nothing. He told her about George's latest school project, about Charlotte's determination to learn piano, about Louis's new fascination with dinosaurs. He shared gossip from the palace, updates on the charities she cared about, and news from mutual friends who called daily, asking for updates he couldn't give. But today felt different. Today, the weight of maintaining hope while preparing for the worst felt unbearable. The doctors had been honest with him the day before. After 3 weeks, the chances of a full recovery were diminishing. They hadn't given up, they assured him, but they wanted him to understand the reality of the situation. As William sat holding Kate's hand, he noticed something that made his heart skip: an empty chair in the corner of the room placed thereby. The nursing staff for visitors, but never used. In that moment, looking at that chair, something inside him broke. The chair represented all the conversations they would never have, all the moments that would remain empty, all the dreams that hung in the balance. He had been strong for the children, strong for the nation, strong for everyone except himself. But looking at that empty chair, he realized that strength wasn't about holding everything together. Sometimes strength was about admitting that you were falling apart, The afternoon light cast long shadows across the hospital room as William continued to sit beside Kate's bed. The medical team had completed their hourly checks, adjusting monitors and noting readings on charts that had become as familiar to him as his own reflection. Dr. Harrison, Kate's primary neurologist, stopped by earlier with the same cautiously optimistic but ultimately inconclusive update he gave every day. William's phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, government officials, and friends from around the world. His brother Harry had called from California that morning, his voice thick with emotion as he offered to fly back immediately. Their father, King Charles, visited every other day, though the sight of his daughter-in-law in this condition clearly took a toll on him. The weight of royal duty meant that life had to continue, ceremonies had to be attended, and the business of the monarchy couldn't pause for personal tragedy. But in this room, time seemed suspended. William had learned to read the subtle changes in Kate's breathing, the slight variations in her heart rate that the machines displayed in green digital numbers. The nurses had assured him these fluctuations were normal, but he clung to each one as a potential sign of improvement. "The children asked about you again this morning," he said softly, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of her hand. "Charlotte wanted to know if you're having beautiful dreams. I told her you probably are, that you're dreaming about all of us together." His voice caught slightly. "I hope that's true, Kate. I hope wherever you are right now it's peaceful." Door opened quietly, and William looked up to see his mother-in-law, Carol Middleton, entering with a fresh bouquet of flowers from her garden. Kate's parents had been constant presences at the hospital, taking shifts so that someone from the family was always nearby. Carol's eyes were redrimmed from crying, but she maintained the same strong facade that had helped her daughter navigate royal life. "Any changes today?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from William's expression. "The same," he replied. "The doctors say her brain activity is stable, which is positive, but ... trailed off, unable to voice the growing fear that stable might not be enough." Carol arranged the flowers in a vase, her movements precise and careful. "She's stubborn, you know," she said, not looking at William. Even as a little girl, Kate would dig her heels in when she made up her mind about something. Maybe she's just not ready to come back yet. William appreciated her attempt at optimism, but he could hear the doubt creeping into her voice too. The initial hope that had sustained them all was beginning to fracture under the weight of time and medical reality. Well-meaning friends had shared stories of miraculous recoveries, of people who had awakened after months in comas, but those stories felt increasingly like fairy tales. His phone rang, and he saw his private secretary's number. "Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry to disturb you, but the Prime Minister's office has called twice. They need to know if you'll be able to attend the Commonwealth reception tomorrow evening." William closed his eyes. The reception was important, a gathering of heads. A state that had been planned for months. His absence would be noticed and would generate more speculation about Kate's condition. "I'll call you back in an hour," he said, ending the call. The constant pull between his duty to the crown and his duty to his wife felt like being torn in. Half every royal engagement he attended felt like a betrayal of Kate. Every event he missed felt like a failure of his responsibilities to the nation. Carol must have sensed his internal struggle. "She would want you to go," she said quietly. "Kate always understood the importance of your role. She wouldn't want the monarchy to suffer because of this." "But what if she wakes up while I'm gone?" William asked, voicing the fear that haunted him every time he left the hospital. "What if the first face she sees isn't mine?" "Then she'll know you were being the king she helped prepare you to be," Carol replied, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. As the afternoon wore on, William found himself staring more frequently at that empty chair in the corner. It had become a focal point for his grief, a tangible representation of all the empty spaces Kate's absence had created. The chair where she would sit during their children's bedtime stories. The chair at the head of the dining table during family dinners. The chair beside him during official ceremonies. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. A young nurse named Emma, who had been particularly kind to the family, peered around the door. "Your Royal Highness, would you like me to bring you some tea?" "That would be lovely, thank you," he replied, grateful for the small gesture of normalcy. As Emma prepared to leave, she hesitated. "Sir, if I may say, I've been working in this unit for 5 years, and I've seen many families go through this. The way you talk to her, the way you're here every day, love like that doesn't go unnoticed. Sometimes I think patients can feel it even when they can't show it." After she left, William looked back at Kate's peaceful face and then at the empty chair. For the first time since the accident, he found himself imagining what he would say. If that chair could somehow bring her back, if he could speak to it as if it were Kate herself, listening and waiting to return. The evening hours at the hospital brought a different kind of quiet. The bustle of daytime procedures and visitor hours gave way to the steady hum of life support machines and the soft footsteps of night shift nurses making their rounds. William had sent his security detail to wait in the corridor, needing these precious hours alone with Kate without. The weight of protocol and protection surrounding him. He had attended the Commonwealth reception that afternoon, shaking hands and making conversation while his heart remained in this sterile room. The other heads of state had been gracious, offering their prayers and support. But William had felt like he was performing a role rather than living his life. Every smile felt forced, every diplomatic pleasantry felt hollow when compared to the reality waiting for him here. "I met the Prime Minister of New Zealand today," he told Kate, continuing his practice of sharing his day with her. "Me to give you her regards," she said. "You made quite an impression when you visited Auckland last year." He paused, remembering that trip, how Kate had charmed everyone she met. How she had insisted on visiting a children's hospital despite their packed schedule. The memory triggered a cascade of others. Their wedding day, when she had walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey with such grace and confidence. The births of their children, when she had emerged from the hospital each time, glowing despite exhaustion, to present their babies to the waiting world. The countless charity events where she had used her position to shine light on causes that mattered to her. "Do you remember the Children's Mental Health Initiative you launched?" he asked her, sleeping form. "It's the one you were so passionate about? Well, it's still growing. Your team showed me the latest numbers today. Thousands of young people are getting help because of the work you started. That's your legacy, Kate. That's the difference you've made." His phone buzzed with a text from his father. "How is she tonight? The whole family is praying." William typed back a brief response, but words felt inadequate to describe the strange limbo they all existed in. Hope was becoming harder to maintain, yet giving up felt impossible. Dr. Harrison appeared in the doorway, making his evening rounds. "How are you holding up, Your Royal Highness?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. The medical team had grown, protective of William, witnessing his daily vigil and the toll it was taking on him. "I'm fine," William replied automatically, though they both knew it wasn't true. "You know, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about feeling helpless," Dr. Harrison said, pulling up a second chair. "In my experience, the presence of loved ones during coma recovery can be incredibly powerful. Even if we can't measure it scientifically, there's something to be said for the healing power of human connection." William nodded, though he wondered if his presence was enough. "Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself in here, like she's already gone, and I'm just refusing to accept it." "That's normal," the doctor assured him. "But consider this, if she can hear you, if some part of her is still fighting to come back, then your voice might be the anchor she needs. Your stories about the children, your updates about her work, your simple presence, these things matter, more than you know." After Dr. Harrison left, William found himself studying the empty chair again. Over the past few days, it had taken on an almost mystical quality in his mind. He had begun to imagine Kate sitting there, listening to his daily reports, waiting patiently for the right moment to return to him. It was a fantasy, he knew, but it provided a strange comfort. "I've been thinking about that chair," he said aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "I keep imagining you sitting there, just out of reach but still here with me. I know it sounds mad, but sometimes I feel like I could just turn to it and you'd be there, ready to tell me everything is going to be all right." The room felt charged with emotion as he continued. "The children are starting to forget the sound of your voice. Charlotte tried to call you yesterday, forgetting for a moment that you couldn't answer. George has been acting out at school, And Louis keeps asking when Mummy is coming home from her long sleep. I don't know how to help them when I can barely help myself. William's voice grew stronger, as if the empty chair was indeed listening. I keep thinking about all the things. I should have said more often. How beautiful you are, not just on the outside, but in your heart. How proud I am of the mother you've become, the way you make even the most mundane moments feel special. How you've made me a better man, a better father, a better future king. I stood up and walked toward the chair, his heart pounding. I know. This might sound desperate, but I need you to know that if you're somewhere in between, if you're deciding whether to stay or go, please choose to stay. Choose us. Choose the life we've built together and all the years we haven't had yet. The room seemed to hold its breath as William reached the chair. For a moment, he almost expected to see Kate sitting there, smiling at him with that gentle expression she wore when he was being overly dramatic. But the chair remained empty, a stark reminder of the absence that had consumed his world. I'm going to sit here for a while, he said, settling into the chair that had become his confessional booth. I'm going to tell you everything I should have said before, everything I want to say when you wake up, and everything I'm afraid I might never get the chance to say. From this new vantage point, he could see Kate's face from a different angle, and for a moment he could almost believe that she looked peaceful rather than unconscious, sleeping rather than lost somewhere beyond his reach. Sitting in the empty chair felt different than William had expected. From this position, he had a clear view of Kate's face, but more importantly, he felt closer to her somehow, as if he had stepped into a space that existed between her world and his. The chair creaked slightly as he settled in, and he found himself speaking more freely than he had in weeks. I've been carrying this guilt, he began, his voice raw with honesty. The night of the accident, we had a small argument. Nothing serious. Just one of those silly disagreements that married couples have. You wanted to stay longer at the charity event to meet more of the volunteers, and I was worried about your schedule the next day. I insisted you leave early. His hands clenched the armrests of the chair. If I hadn't pushed you to leave when? You did, if you had stayed just 10 more minutes. ... The weight of that regret had been crushing him since the accident. Every medical professional, every family member, every friend had told him it wasn't his fault, that he couldn't have known what would happen. But logic couldn't touch the deep-seated belief that he had somehow failed to protect the most important person in his life. George asked me yesterday if you were angry with us, William continued, his voice breaking. He thinks maybe you don't want to wake up because we weren't good enough. I tried to explain that it doesn't work that way. But how do you tell a 10-year-old that sometimes terrible things happen for no reason at all? The hospital's night shift was quieter, with fewer interruptions, a different set of nurses who knew to give the prince his space during these evening hours. They had witnessed his transformation over the past 3 weeks, watching him evolve from a man in shock to someone fighting to hold his family together while his own world crumbled. Your mother brought photo albums today, he said, gesturing toward a stack of books on the bedside table. Pictures from when you were little, from university, from our early days together. Do you remember that terrible photo from our first skiing trip? The one where I'm completely tangled up in my equipment and you're laughing so hard you can barely stand up. You always said it was your favorite picture of us because it captured the moment you realized I was human after all. William smiled at the memory, the first genuine smile he had managed in days. You were never impressed by the titles or the palaces or any of it. You fell in love with the man who couldn't ski properly and burned toast and forgot important anniversaries. You made me feel normal in a life that was anything but normal. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. Emma, the young nurse who had become his favorite member of the medical team, peered around the door. I'm sorry to disturb you, sir. Just wanted to check that everything was all right. You've been very quiet tonight. I'm fine, thank you, William replied. Just thinking. Emma hesitated, then stepped further into the room. Sir, if I may, my grandmother was in a coma for 6 weeks after a stroke. We all took turns talking to her, telling her about our lives, our problems, our hopes. When she woke up, she said later that our voices were like lifelines pulling her back. She couldn't respond, but she heard everything. Did she remember what you said to her? William asked, hopeful. Some of it, Emma replied gently. But more importantly, She remembered feeling loved, feeling like she had reasons to fight her way back to us. That's what mattered. After Emma left, William found himself looking at Kate with new eyes. Maybe she could hear him, be somewhere. In the mysterious landscape of her unconscious mind, she was listening to his confessions, his fears, his desperate pleas for her to return. "If you can hear me," he said, leaning forward in the chair, "I need you to know that you're not just my wife. You're my best friend, my partner in everything that matters. You're the one person who knows all my flaws and loves me anyway. You're the mother our children need, not just because you take care of them, but because you show them how to be kind, how to be strong, how to care about others." His voice grew more urgent. "The country needs you too, Kate. Not just as a princess, but as the person who remembers everyone's name, who asks about their children, who makes people feel seen and valued. You've changed what it means to be royal. You've shown that service isn't just about duty, it's about genuine care for others." William stood up from the chair and moved closer to Kate's bed. "But selfishly, I need you because I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to be a father to 3 children who are hurting and confused. I don't know how to be a future king without the woman who helped me understand what that responsibility really means." He took her hand again, noting how familiar. It had become this one-sided conversation. "The doctors say your brain activity is still normal, that your body is healing from the trauma. They say there's still hope. But I need more than medical hope, Kate. I need you to choose to come back to us. I need you to fight your way out of wherever you are and come home." The empty chair behind him seemed to hold all the weight of his words, as if it were a vessel for his prayers and pleas. Tomorrow would mark for weeks since the accident. While the doctors hadn't given up, William could see the subtle shift in their expressions. The careful way they chose their words. "I'm going to keep talking to you," he promised, settling back into the chair that had become his sanctuary. "Every day, for as long as it takes. If you're listening, if you're trying to find your way back to us, just know that we're all here waiting for you. Your chair at our dinner table is empty. Your side of our bed is cold. Your place in our lives can never be filled by anyone else." For weeks and 2 days, William had stopped counting hours and started marking time in days, each one feeling like a small eternity. The morning routine had become mechanical coffee with his father while reviewing the day's schedule. Breakfast with the children where he tried to maintain normalcy, and then the familiar journey to the hospital where Kate continued her mysterious sleep, but today felt different. The medical team had been more animated during their morning rounds, speaking in hushed, excited tones that they tried to hide from him. Dr. Harrison had asked for additional tests, neurological assessments that hadn't been performed in over a week. When William pressed for information, the doctor had been cautiously optimistic, but unwilling to raise hopes unnecessarily. "There's been some increased activity in certain areas of her brain," Dr. Harrison had explained. "It could be significant, or it could be normal fluctuation. We're monitoring it closely." William had learned to be wary of medical optimism. Too many times over the past month, he had allowed himself to hope based on small improvements that ultimately led nowhere. But something about today felt different. The nurses seemed more attentive, the machines seemed to beep with more purpose, and Kate herself looked somehow more present, though she remained unresponsive. "The children are coming to visit this afternoon," he told Kate, as he settled into what had become his chair. "George insisted on bringing the card he made for you in art class. It's a drawing of our family standing in front of Kensington Palace, and he made sure to draw you with your biggest smile. Charlotte has been practicing a song on the piano that she wants to sing for you. And Louis drew you a picture of dinosaurs because he's convinced that everyone loves dinosaurs as much as he does." The thought of his children seeing their mother like this still broke his heart, but their innocence had also been a source of strength. They approached Kate's condition with a matter-of-fact acceptance that adults couldn't manage, talking to her as if she were simply sleeping and would wake up when she was ready. "Your sister Pippa called this morning," William continued. "She's been organizing a charity run in your honor. Thousands of people have signed up, all wearing blue ribbons for brain injury awareness. She said the response has been overwhelming. People from all walks of life wanting to do something, anything, to show their support." He paused, watching Kate's face for any sign of recognition. The afternoon light streaming through the window highlighted the familiar features. He had memorized over their years together the slight upturn of her nose, the way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the lips that had spoken countless words of love and encouragement. "I've been thinking about our wedding day," he said softly. "Not the public ceremony, but that quiet moment we had before walking into Westminster Abbey. You were so calm, so beautiful, and I was terrified. Not about marrying you. I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. But I was scared that I wouldn't be worthy of the trust you were placing in me." William's voice grew thick with emotion. "You took my hands and said, 'We're in this together, whatever comes.' You were 29 years old, and you were promising to take on a life that would never really belong to us. A life where every moment would be scrutinized, and every decision would have consequences beyond our family. And you did it because you believed in us." A soft knock interrupted his reverie. Emma entered with the afternoon medication schedule, but her expression was different today. There was an excitement in her eyes that she was trying to contain professionally. "Any changes today?" William asked hopefully. "Well," Emma said carefully, "I don't want to get your hopes up, but we've noticed some very subtle responses. Dramatic but small things." Her hand seemed to tighten slightly when I was adjusting her position earlier. Her eyes moved beneath her lids when Dr. Harrison spoke to her during rounds. William's heart began to race. "What does that mean?" "It could mean that she's beginning to emerge from the deeper levels of unconsciousness," Emma explained. "But please understand this process can take time. She might have moments where she seems more present, followed by periods where she retreats again. Recovery from this type of brain injury isn't linear." After Emma left, William found himself staring intently at Kate's face, looking for any sign of the changes the medical team had observed. He'd imagined this moment so many times over the past month, but now that it might actually be happening, he felt overwhelmed with a mixture of hope and fear. "Kate," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks, "if you can hear me, if you're trying to come back to us, I want you to know that we're all here waiting for you. The children need their mother, the country needs their princess. But most of all, I need my wife, my partner, my best friend." He reached for her hand, holding it between both of his. "I know I said terrible things about that empty chair over there, about how it represented everything we might lose. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe it represents something else entirely. Maybe it represents hope, the place where you'll sit when you're ready to come back to us. It's a space that's been waiting for you all along." William looked from Kate to the empty chair and back again. "I'm going to keep talking to you, keep believing that somewhere inside you're listening and fighting your way back. And when you're ready, when you're strong enough, I'll be right here to help you find your way home." For the first time in over a month, William allowed himself to truly believe that this nightmare might have an ending that didn't involve losing the love of his life. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, but now each beep sounded like a promise rather than a reminder of how fragile life could be. The morning of the 32nd day began like all the others, with William arriving at the hospital carrying fresh flowers and a thermos of tea that had grown cold during his commute. But as he approached Kate's room, he noticed unusual activity. Nurses moving with purpose, Dr. Harrison speaking in urgent whispers with his colleague, and an energy in the air that felt different from the steady routine of the past month. "Your Royal Highness," Dr. Harrison called as William entered the corridor. "We've been trying to reach you. There have been some significant developments overnight." William's heart hammered against his ribs. What kind of developments? Kate's brain activity increased dramatically around for this morning. She's showing consistent responses to stimuli, and her eyes have been tracking movement. "We believe she may be emerging from the coma." The words hit William like a physical force. After weeks of cautious optimism and medical uncertainty, this felt almost too enormous to process. "Can I see her?" "Of course, but I want to prepare you. She's not fully conscious yet, and when coma patients begin to wake up, it's often a gradual process. She may be confused, disoriented, and she might not recognize you immediately. Her speech and motor functions may be affected initially."
William
nodded, though he barely heard the warnings. After 32 days of one-sided conversations and desperate prayers, The possibility that Kate might actually respond felt like a miracle he hardly dared to believe. As he entered her room, William immediately noticed the difference. Kate's head was turned slightly to one side, and her breathing seemed more natural, less dependent on the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. The nursing staff had reduced some of the medical equipment, and the room felt less like an intensive care unit and more like a place where healing was actually possible. "Kate," he said softly, approaching her bed with trembling hands. "Darling, can you hear me?" For a moment nothing happened. Then, so slowly that William thought he might be imagining it, Kate's eyelids fluttered. Not the random movement he had seen occasionally over the past month, but something purposeful, as if she were struggling to open her eyes. "That's it," he whispered, taking her hand. "Take your time, I'm right here," appeared beside him, monitoring Kate's vital signs. "This is exactly what we hope to see," she said quietly. "Talk to her, Your Royal Highness. Let her hear your voice. Kate, it's William. You've been sleeping for a very long time, but you're safe now. The hospital and everyone has been taking wonderful care of you. The children are fine, they're at school right now, but they'll be so excited to see you when you're ready." Kate's eyes opened slightly, unfocused and cloudy, but definitely open. She seemed to be looking in his direction, though William couldn't tell if she actually saw him. Her lips moved soundlessly, as if she were trying to speak, but couldn't quite remember how. "Don't try to talk yet," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "Just rest. Just let yourself come back to us slowly." Over the next several hours, Kate drifted in and out of consciousness, each waking period lasting a little longer than the previous one. William never left her side, narrating everything that was happening, describing the room, the flowers, the cards from well-wishers around the world. He told her about the children's visits over the past month, about the drawings they had made for her, about how bravely they had handled her absence. Late in the afternoon, as William was updating her on George's latest school achievements, Kate's eyes opened again and seemed to focus directly on his face. This time, there was recognition there, a spark of the woman he knew and loved. "William?" she whispered, her voice barely audible and rough from weeks of intubation. "Yes," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, it's me. You're awake." "Came back to us." Kate's eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in the medical equipment, the flowers, the evidence of the time that had passed. When her gaze fell on the empty chair in the corner, the chair that had become William's sanctuary during the darkest hours, her brow furrowed slightly. "How long?" she asked, each word requiring enormous effort. "A little over a month," William replied honestly. "But none of that matters now. You're here, you're awake, and you're going to be fine." Kate's eyes returned to his face, and despite her weakness, despite the confusion and disorientation that Dr. Harrison had warned about, William could see love there. The same love that had sustained their marriage, that had carried them through royal duties and personal challenges, that had created the family waiting at home for news of her recovery. "The children," she whispered. "They're perfect," William assured her. "They've been so brave, Kate. They knew you were fighting to come back to them, and they never lost faith." Dr. Harrison entered the room to conduct his assessment, his professional demeanor barely concealing his excitement at this breakthrough. After a series of simple tests, following light with her eyes, squeezing his hands on command, responding to basic questions, he confirmed what William already knew in his heart. "Welcome back, Your Royal Highness," Dr. Harrison said with a broad smile. "You've given us all quite a scare." As evening approached, and Kate's periods of wakefulness grew longer, William found himself looking again at that empty chair. For weeks, it had represented his fears, his desperate conversations with an unresponsive universe. But now he understood that it had served a different purpose entirely. It had been a place of hope, a sanctuary where he had poured out his love and faith, never knowing if his words were reaching her, but speaking them anyway. "I used to talk to that chair," he told Kate softly, gesturing toward the corner. "When I didn't know if you could hear me, when I felt like I was losing my mind with worry, I would sit there and tell it everything I wished I could tell you." Kate's eyes followed his gaze to the empty chair, and something flickered across her face, not quite a smile, but a softening that suggested understanding. "I heard you," she whispered, so quietly that William had to lean closer to catch her words. Not everything, but your voice. It was like a light in the darkness. The revelation sent chills through William's entire body. All those hours of feeling foolish for talking to someone who couldn't respond. All those moments of desperate one-sided conversation, she had been listening. Somewhere in the mysterious landscape of her unconscious mind, his voice had been reaching her, guiding her back to them. I told that chair that I loved you, William said, his voice thick with emotion. I told it about the children, about how lost we all were without you, about how much we needed you to come home. I know, Kate replied, her hand finding his with more strength than she had shown all day. I felt it. I felt all of you pulling me back. Dr. Harrison had warned them that the road to full recovery would be long, with physical therapy, speech, therapy, and careful monitoring for months to come. But as William sat beside Kate's bed, watching her fight to stay awake so she could hear more about everything she had missed, he knew that the hardest part was over. The children will be here. Tomorrow, he told her. I've been preparing them gradually, letting them know that you were getting better. George has been keeping a journal for you of everything that happened while you were sleeping. Charlotte learned a new piano piece she wants to play for you, and Lewis has at least 50 new facts about dinosaurs to share. Kate's eyes filled with tears, the first emotion she had been strong enough to express since waking. I miss so much. You didn't miss anything that matters, William assured her. Love doesn't pause, Kate. Family doesn't pause. We were all right here, waiting for you, loving you, believing you would come back to us. As the evening shadows lengthened across the hospital room, William noticed that Kate kept glancing at the empty chair. Finally, she spoke the words that would break his heart and heal it simultaneously. Will you, ... Will you sit there? She asked weakly. In the chair? I want to see you where you were all those times when you were talking to me. William moved to the chair that had been his confessional, his sanctuary, his lifeline during the darkest month of his life. From this familiar position, he could see Kate fully conscious and looking back at him, her eyes bright with love despite her exhaustion. I'm here, he said simply. I'm right here, and I'm never leaving again. Tell me about the children, Kate whispered. Tell me everything. And so William began to talk, just as he had every day for 32 days. But this time with the miracle of Kate's eyes watching him, her hand occasionally squeezing his, her soft voice asking questions and making comments that reminded him why he had fallen in love with her all those years ago. The empty chair would remain in that hospital room for the 3 weeks Kate needed to fully recover her strength. But it was no longer empty in the way it had been. It had become a symbol of faith rewarded, of love that persists through the darkest circumstances, and of the power of never giving up on the people who matter most. When Kate was finally strong enough to go home, William would look back at that chair one last time. It had taught him that sometimes the most important conversations happen when only one person is speaking, and that love is not diminished by silence but proven by persistence. The nation that had held its breath for over a month finally exhaled in joy when the palace announced that Catherine, Princess of Wales, had made a full recovery and would be returning home to her family. But for William, the real victory was simpler and more profound. The empty chair in the corner of their lives was empty no more.